the See You Try show. My name is Karen Sims, and I'm with the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. And just a friendly reminder, the Trauma Resiliency Initiative is an effort trying to work to make Champaign County a trauma and more resilient community. And I also want to add that the views and opinions of the guest are their own. And if you have any questions or comments or any of those things, we welcome your questions. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible. And I am super happy to have two amazing guests that I have worked with and had the privilege of working with and collaborating with and serving with for a while since I've been in Champaign. So I have Regina Crider and Ulanda Hunter with the Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about why we invited them this month, and just sort of also to tell you what to look forward to. So give me 1 second. So at our last Trauma and Resiliency Working Group, there's a working group. We decided that every month we would sort of focus on a theme. And this theme is both Children's Mental Health Awareness Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we're kicking off sort of a series of topics and conversations that we think might be interesting to you. So Regina and Yolanda, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Regina Crider, and I'm the Director of Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance. I have a daughter who has mental health challenges, so I have lived experience navigating multiple systems for her, and I'm excited to be here on today to talk about mental health and children's mental health.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yolanda Hunter. I am the project director and a parent peer supporter. I also too have lived experience, and I am happy to be a part of the show today.
Wonderful. So before we get too far in the weeds, I want to have you continue to introduce yourselves. And both of you have described something. You guys know I'm always going to make you unpack terms. So Regina, you talked about systems, and Yolanda, you talked about lived experience. Let's make sure we're all on the same page with those concepts and terms. So what are we talking about regarding systems, and what are we talking about? What's lived experience? What's that?
So specifically for my daughter in navigating systems, we navigated systems that consist of the school system, the mental health system, we did developmental disability systems. So those systems are those larger entities where we take our children and get different services for them. It's on a macro level versus a micro level. So you have your child serving systems as well. So you got juvenile justice. There's various systems that most of us are familiar with, but maybe not using the terminology systems.
Yeah. So I think you're saying like you want people to tease apart the difference between like a program, like an after school program, and then the service, the whole arena of children's programming that might include after school, might include all these kinds of things. So is that the difference between the macro and the micro?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
And when you talk about lived experience, that is a parent who have navigated the systems such as Regina said. So I had to navigate the education and the juvenile justice system just because of the community, some of the things that was going on in the community around the girl violence and just different types of things. So it's just being able to take another parent through the path that you have taken because you have experienced it. So you have more knowledge around how to get through that system and get the supports that you need and advocate for what you need for your child, and to be able to use that lived experience to relate to other parents who are working through challenges around education or juvenile justice or child welfare. So it's just taking that knowledge and pairing yourself with another parent to kind of help them navigate also.
Love it. And I'm sure we're going to have a further conversation about why that might be important and all of that great stuff. So tell me about the Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance. Like if I'm out there and trying to, understand sort of why you came to be, give me some history and background.
So the Alliance was birthed out of the out of Access Initiative, specifically around children's mental health. Our organization is focuses on supporting parents who have children with mental health challenges and assisting them with navigating various systems. But our service is unique in the sense that what we do is provide support specifically for the parent. And there are multiple youth programs that young people can access, but there are very few and far between services that are specific to the parent. And we, as Ulanda stated, have that lived experience. So we can identify with them and say, hey, we've walked in your shoes. We're here to support you. We want to, we're not here as parent correctors, right? We're here to go on the journey with you as to what is best for your family. We are firm believers that when given the opportunity and the right platform and the resources needed, families can solve problems for themselves. They don't need us to come in and tell them what to do. Another aspect of our organization, when we say family, we're saying that this organization, Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance, is governed by family members who have lived experience. So 51% of our board of directors are people like us who have, navigated those various systems. We also provide technical assistance and training and support to child serving organizations in various systems. We also provide that locally here in Champaign County, but we also have it, we provide that support throughout the state of Illinois. So we have various organizations that we work with. We also work with some managed care organizations as well. And which is really exciting because the state of Illinois is really moving more towards providing the types of supports that families need who are receiving Medicaid or have those managed care organizations that are providing services for them. So the Alliance is unique in that we really focus on the needs of the parent. And just as to state, our services for parents is only available in Champaign County, but we do serve the entire county.
Wow. That sounds like a lot, right? Like, and so I have a bunch of questions, but Yolanda, do you have anything to add? Wow, that seems like a lot of stuff that you do.
No, Regina hit all the important
All
things.
right. So can we just like have a conversation? Why do you feel like, first of all, it seems like what you're doing is really unique. Is it unique? Why do you like what happened regarding access where we started thinking about families? Yeah. So tell me something about the framework around why you started, and is this unique, or are there other similar kind of programs in the state or maybe in other places? How did this come to be?
Our services are not unique, and it's actually a movement across the state as well as nationally. Unfortunately, or fortunately, just depending on the perspective, Illinois has kind of been lagging in promoting the family peer supporter. That's what we call the supporter, or the other parent with the lived experience who comes out and be there for the parent. It's not a unique situation. However, the state of Illinois is now implementing family peer support through the Medicaid billing system, which was not a billable service previously. So families are going to begin to be able to access family peer support through their medical insurance that they haven't been able to do in the past. And I want Ulanda to be able to weigh in on this as well.
Great, because yeah, what can a family person do that like a regular old provide? Why would I need to have a peer support? Like, what would be the point of that?
Well, the reality of it is that when you have somebody who is working with you, who have shared experiences with, they tend to trust you more because peer support is based on a model that we use called pearls. And so it's an evidence-based practice that is evidence-based, that it is proven that it works. But when I go to meet with a family or a peer, and I go to connect with them, it's all about building a peer-based relationship and connecting with them based off of what we share in common. Our scenarios may not be exact, but they most likely are similar. And so when I start to connect with the parent and the parent see that, okay, she's just like me. She had to do the same. She went through what I'm going through, or she's going through what I'm going through. And so therefore, I'm able to connect, or whatever peer support is working with the parent is able to connect with that parent. And so when you start to build a connection, you start to build trust. And so our goal is to help parents to be educated on what is most helpful for them and their family, how to get the supports and the resources that you need for your family. And also that you're not the only one going through this type of situations. There's other people going through similar situations, and it's okay. It's okay because oftentimes when you have parents that are navigating some type of child service system, we get people in those systems judging those parents like, oh, they're not a good parent. Oh, they're not following through with these. And just all these type of stigmas that oftentimes cause parents not to trust. And then they go unsupported, they go unheard, and several type of things. And I want to introduce a new term because, and I know you're going to ask me to explain it. So what we do is we let the family guide that process. The family and the youth guide the process on what that looks, but we do that by educating them, talking with them, meeting with them on a regular basis, and just constantly building a connection with them. It's never their responsibility to connect with us because it's our responsibility to connect with them because they're allowing us to come into their home, into their family, and they're sharing with us some of their deepest challenges. And we have to honor that and respect that in a way that shows that we understand them, we care for them, and that we recognize that everything is not easy on a day-to-day basis. So I hope that kind of answers that because our services are very non-traditional. They're non-traditional services, so they're not going to sound like most organization services. They're going to sound touchy-feely and all that type of stuff because that's how it's supposed to be.
So, all right, help me. Let me make sure I get all the points right. The Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance is a part of a national trend, right? You both do education, training, and consultant to help other organizations and insurance companies sort of figure out how to design services and supports. And locally, what you offer are one-on-one sort of support services to families, particularly to caregivers or family members, helping them through being empathetic, listening to them, walking them, and also doing lots of education and coaching and support. Did I have that right, or what else did I miss?
No, that's
all right. Okay. Because
I do want to add to say that with it being a evidence-based practice, meaning that we know that it works, it's been proven that it works. I also want to add that it's cost effective. There are things that we can do, make ourselves more accessible and available that maybe other career paths, such as social workers or therapists or whatever the case may be, we can meet with a family as often as they need us. So the family drives the process. And we do have a way of determining what they think, what they need. And then they decide, yeah, I think I could see you 2 or 3 times a week, or no, I don't want to see you 2 or 3 times a week. I just want you to give me a call and check in on me. So it's really determined by the family. And families need to be in control of their services, right? And sometimes it's difficult for families. What has happened is that they've always been others directed by the program or the services. And what we do is provide that support so that they can be self-directed and supporting them in their decisions. And sometimes that's very difficult for some parents to fathom that, oh, I get to choose, I get to say what is most important. And we find that a lot, especially in IEP meetings. When we attend IEP, when we attend IEP meetings and educate parents on that process and what to navigate that system.
Okay,
so
what's an
to say
IEP?
that it is cost effective.
Yeah.
So did
Those
you hear me? What's an
IEP
IEP?
Oh,
Oh,
individual education plan for children who need additional supports
Where?
in schools.
in school.
Again, I'm gonna have us like remember 3rd to 5th grade level. I'm gonna make us use Chandra's good culturally competent skills. We're gonna keep it on way basic. So it sounds like the other thing that I heard you mention that you do, and then I want to sort of shift a little bit, is that you also help do some advocacy. And it really has an empowerment lens, but I can imagine that you are teaching and transferring advocacy skills. And do you have the opportunity to do advocacy with the systems that you're working with? Because, you know, having empowered families that have a sense of like what they want and need and having a voice and having a seat at the table isn't a normal part of our helping systems. Am I right? Like that's not like something that happens on an everyday basis. So are you also advocating for change?
Yes, we are. And that was, I wanted to add on what Regina said. We are bridging that communication gap between families and other organizations. So we don't want people to see the advocacy as adversarial, but as a common connection across the board with both, you know, the families and the other service systems that they're involved with. So we want to bridge that gap and come and have everybody come to a table where it's a equal on equal settings, right? We know some things when we say family driven that they can choose their services. We know some stuff are mandatory that they just cannot say, oh, well, my kid don't need to go to probation meeting. We're not doing that. No, 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 no. You do have to do that, but let's come up with a way where it fits in your schedule, because maybe the mother, the parent, the peer have to take off work, and that's not a good time. So let's see if we can find another way to meet that need, right? So we want to bridge that gap between organizations and the family, so that it won't be a breakdown in communication. Because as soon as there's a breakdown, then you know, of course, the peer is not compliant or the family is not compliant, and we don't want to have people speaking about families, because when people, and we also want to change the way people think and speak about families, because when we learned that when the way people speak about them is the way they're going to treat them, right? So if you're calling the parent peer mom, that means you have no respect for them. When they're calling you Miss Karen or Miss Yolanda, call them Miss, you know, parent. Like, we want to give them this honor and respect that they're giving us, right? That we're on equal ground. So we try to make sure that it's as level, you know, ground as possible. And that's where that training and engagement to organizations that we can do to help do that.
Gotcha. All right. So you asked this is the last question I'm going to ask before we sort of shift to think about children's mental health more broadly and deeply. But what do you think people misunderstand or don't understand about families? Because I'm imagining, Regina, you said that, Regina and Yolanda, you both said that your work was evidence-based. So clearly you create some outcomes, but what do you think people don't understand about families, and why do you think like we're so behind the curve around providing family support?
I believe because the services have been delivered like this for so long that this is the norm. And it's important for us to recognize and honor the family. one of the things that when I do trainings with service providers or managed care organizations, I approach it from the standpoint that we have the opportunity to come in and see everything that's going on with this family. We enter their sacred space. We are able to come into their home. We begin to learn more about their family and their children and their struggles and their highs and their lows. And so as a provider, to me, it's our responsibility to enter that sacred space in humility.
Mhm.
And the way that I look at it is that when I come in to work with a family, and this is what we utilize in the alliance, is that I come to sit at your feet to learn about you. I'm not coming in to tell you about yourself. I'm not coming in to tell you about your youth. I'm coming in to learn so that I know how to support you. I come to seek to understand you before I try to make judgments. And that's what we train providers on, to understand that this is a privilege to serve families. It's an honor to serve families. It's not that you're doing something for them, it's something that you're doing with them. And it's important to keep that in the forefront. So I think that is, to me, the most respectful and honoring to the family, and especially the parent, because no one wants another person to come in and critique their parenting, right? We have to honor folks where they are and celebrate where they are, and not try to say what you're doing is wrong, right? But to just support them and where they are, to do what's best for their family.
Yeah. I hear that clearly. Yolanda, did you have anything that you wanted to add? What do we think we get wrong about families?
I think that just prejudging them based off of other people. I think that so a long time ago, and I always share this with people, and I share this if I'm training with providers, and I think you probably heard me say this. I think that some of the best training I had was when you brought Carl in to train us on wraparound, and he said he never reads the narrative of the family. And I found that to be the most helpful thing, because when you start to read those things, you start to get, pick up a bias or prejudge what the family is. So I think just being able to allow yourself to meet the family where they are without that, you can go back later and read that, but just meet the family where they are at that time, right? Because sometimes narratives, I know from experience working with families, are totally wrong. Sometimes people don't like the people. I just have to be real. Sometimes workers don't like the people that they working supporting. They would sabotage. And because if a parent don't understand what's going on, then they just get caught up in a system that is just keeping them, going around in circles. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. Just allowing yourself to be open enough to meet the family without, and I think another thing too is, like, when you get a referral or when you want to, we don't like people to just refer a family without telling the family that they've been referred. I think that's a total disrespect. And I think that just says that, I don't know, it just says all kind of wrong. And I just think that if you be open and transparent with families, that's what they like, just tell them like, hey, you have an option. I can make a referral for you for, blah, blah, blah. Would you like for me to do that? But don't just do it, because then that's saying a lot of things. So I don't think you're doing a good job as a parent, and you need additional helps, and, just all these negative connotations come behind that. So, yeah.
Wow. So
I'd like to add just for a second that with that, like she was saying about referrals, it's subjective, right? And how people view that person. And we all know that there are families that we have worked with for years in Champaign, right? And everyone has a narrative about that family. But what what's important is for us to get to know the family for ourselves and not basing it upon what other people are saying, other organizations. And that doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't true, but let us look at it in the light of, I'm going to hear what you have to say, and so that I can get to know you myself. I think that that's critical when serving families.
Right.
So I know you both have taught me that one of the things that gets in the way, along with what you said, is that we as a system sometimes see parents who need services and supports as somehow bad parents or broken parents or not good parents. And that bias drives all of our interactions. So if we say, hey, this kid is in need of help, that means that there's something that went wrong with parents or the parenting process, and that somehow they're deficit in some ways, then that's going to change your implicit bias, right? That you're going to go in saying, I need to fix you and fix your system. The other thing that I think that I've learned from you both is that there's an implicit bias around families don't know what works for them, or that they're somehow going to be difficult, or they don't want to help their kids, or don't want to be involved, or, all of that stuff. And I believe that if we have a system where we only pay attention to the kids until the kids have problems, and then we go back to parents and say, fix them, we've created that things out of order. So then, if you break them, then you fix them. If you include me in the process all along, then we can collaborate together with solutions. But you can't get mad at me after you said, I'm not calling you, I'm doing my things my way. And then when it ain't working, when my way doesn't work with your kid, then I'm gonna call you up and say, hey, fix it. Nope. Right. And so thinking about that collaborative process is a hard power with. And I know that that's some of the training that you do with providers or people who provide services, is understand this is an equal partner in the journey, and you aren't better expert. You might have some more knowledge over here, but this parent or caregiver has as many tools as you do too. And so how do we let that wisdom come in the room?
Parents are the expert of their children, and I don't care how bad a situation looks. Parents want the best for their kids. They really want the best for their kids. Sometimes they don't know how to get there. And I always, tell people, we don't always get it right. Each child requires something different, and each child requires a different way to parent. But the way we parent our kids is not wrong, because people are not things, they are not broken. They're not broken. You just can't, oh, let me put the arm back together and then put this screw in the brain and then everything go away. That's not how it is. It's a journey, and it's not a sprint, a sprint. It's a journey,
And to add what you said, Karen, about what we've learned, what you learned from us, one of the things that I learned from you early on in this process is unconditional care, right? Just because a family necessarily isn't engaged the way we think, that we don't just give up on them, right? We don't just say, well, I've called you 3 times and I sent you a letter and you haven't responded. So when you're ready, we're going to close out your case. In the meantime, if you need us, right, the form letter, if you need us, you can reach out to us. And so what we do in our organization is that if you are not necessarily responsive immediately, we still check in with you periodically, because what we do know, right, is that if you move into a crisis situation, 9 times out of 10, they will call you. Why? Because you have kept in contact with them. And I am a firm believer in unconditional care. And I think that's why sometimes families can fall through the cracks, because we set these expectations. You don't know what families are dealing with. And so now here you come and you want to meet once a week, or you want to meet every 2 weeks, and folks may not just have time for that. And that's okay, right? One of the things that I think is really important around providing support, once again, non-traditional, guess what? Everybody don't want to see you every week. you can call me. And I think that that's one of the things that has been very difficult in when we're dealing with systems and dealing with funding, is that they want you to do the face-to-face. People may not want to do face-to-face, maybe a quick phone call. And now that we have other means of communicating, it may be a text message, it may be a Zoom quick call where I don't have to disrupt my day, right? And I think it's important for us to remember that unconditional care, and I know a lot of organizations push back on that, but we really commit to unconditional care.
Thank you. Even organizations that will say that they are not picking on anybody, I'm going to say like not here, not in Illinois, but in other places, even organizations that say they are trauma informed or have trauma specific strategies will still have really punitive, non-trauma informed strategies like 3 strikes you're out, or firing clients, or forcing people to do, right, like, or forcing folks,
you're fired.
Right, like, and why are you firing them? Because they were non-compliant, right? Instead, I love your approach. You're meeting families where they are, and learning from them and being responsive to them and letting them drive their care-seeking experiences. So, do you think maybe we should shift a little bit, and we might come back to this and talk about children's mental health? So,
Yes.
I know that, we've been for how many years doing Children's Mental Health Awareness Week, and you all celebrated all month and have a bunch of different things. So tell me about Children's Mental Health Awareness Week month. What is it?
So children's mental health awareness, started back in maybe like, I don't know, the 1800s, where they had people, like they used green as a sign to come back, to let people know that these, people had mental health. So as things start to grow, Children's Mental Health Week became about in 1949, and they decided to keep the green as a representation of children's mental health awareness. So one of the things is that we wear green that month. Green is the color. Like if you have cancer is red and lupus is purple, ours is green, right? And so we wear a green ribbon to signify new life, new growth, new beginnings, and we wear green ribbons to raise public awareness about a better way that children can live their lives with, mental health. So we want to show support in that way. That's why we have the green. We also want to erase stigmas around, youth or just any person that has mental health, because a lot of times we get these myths about like, oh, they're crazy, they can't live normal lives and all these different type of things, when they can't. Some of our best workers have mental health, and some people don't even know they have mental health, right? It's just so much that we want to do when it comes down to mental health awareness. We want to make it as normal as everything else, so people are not afraid to talk about mental health, so people will go and seek the treatment they want. And one of our biggest, our audience that we're trying to erase stigmas around is our Black community, right? Because we believe in old school, take them to church, whoop them, put them on a punishment, sit them in a corner for 10 minutes, don't open your mouth. And that's not always the case. Your mental health is so more important than even in your physical health. You can be physically healthy as an ox and then can't control anything because you're not mentally together. So mental health, your head is the top. So that controls every part of your body. And I don't know, some people understand that and some people don't. It's very important that we make sure that people know that mental health is something that is common. 6.1 million families in America are affected by mental illnesses.
Wow.
To add, go ahead, Ulanda.
No, you go.
To add to that, I like to describe it as a hidden disability, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people are so empathetic if they can see the disability. But I have told people, they've asked me, what do you do? and I explain to them, and I get more like a pat on the head. Oh, that's a noble cause, right? But if we see someone in a wheelchair, or we see someone who goes to treatment for cancer, or whatever the case may be, we can truly empathize with that. But mental health is a hidden disability. The other thing is important is if we don't address mental health in childhood, guess what's going to happen? They're going to transition into adulthood with the same mental health, right? And so we do our children a disservice to not acknowledge and say, I don't know what this behavior is, and maybe I should check it out. And that's what one of the things when we do peer support, I encourage parents, if there's something that you can't quite figure out, let's go take them to the doctor and see, and then you can decide what you want to do with that information, right? I'm not getting ready to tell you put your kid on medicine, send them to therapy. I'm not going to say any of those things. I'm going to say, okay, so now we know what the doctor is saying. These are their recommendations. Go home, think about it, pray about it, talk to your family about it, do whatever you need. And then if you choose to do something, I'm here to support you. If you choose not to do something, I'm still here to support you, right? But at least be knowledgeable. And the other thing is that a lot of children suffer with anxiety early on in life, and I don't think we always know what that looks like. So by educating yourself, it's no different than understanding milestones. It's no different than looking at those milestones of when they're supposed to be walking, when they're supposed to be talking, or whatever the case may be. Let's learn and empower ourselves to say, hey, maybe there's something going on with my kid. There are times that a lot of times mental health, acute mental health challenges will present at around 10 years of age, right? And so it's not anything to be afraid of. There are a lot of good services out there. And I think a lot of people, especially in the Black community, are afraid of, they're gonna put my kid on medication.
Right.
I don't want them on meds. I get it. There are non-traditional ways of being able to navigate those things. Let's just learn what they are. So I think that children's mental health is very important, and for us to share information and help empower, educate, transfer knowledge about mental health about our children.
Right.
Can I have us break that down? Because if I'm imagining, right, as Yolanda said, if I'm from Black, Indigenous, from communities of color, and I've been raised old school, air quotes, old school, and what might I see that would have me, think that my kid might have a mental health need, or, might not be mentally well. What kind of things should I look for? What are we talking about here, right? Because I may not know. We're throwing around mental health, and it may not be like even in my wheelhouse. What should I be looking for?
Well, it depends on the age, because what happens is sometimes our kiddos can get diagnosed with ADHD because they can't sit in a chair for 15 minutes in kindergarten, right? So then every morning the kid is like, I can't, I don't want to sit down. I'm, they're antsy. And so now it's bothering the teacher. So now the teacher needs the parent to come in. The parent don't, then they want to try to diagnose the kid. But what I say that if your kid, things like if your kid, I mean, sometimes it's really hard to determine if they really, really, really young, right? Because sometimes people think that when the kids fall out and have tantrums, or if they hit their head on the wall, maybe they need, well, we'll probably whoop our kids, don't do it again. But most of the times it can be that they just have some anxiety about something. So this kind of bring me to sometimes kids have anxiety, and depending on what has happened in that family, right? It could be some trauma that presents itself as mental health, right? And so sometimes you can have mental health issues that present, that can traumatize the rest of the family, right? So it's just a balance of being able to understand if there are extreme things going on, because sometimes you can have a kid just having tantrums and falling out. That don't mean that they have a mental health problem, right? Just because a kid like to move around a lot doesn't mean they have a mental health problem. They or it could. So my thing is, if you see extreme behaviors that, or if you're following your, I like to give parents those youth development charts, right? So they can see what is the behavior for each age. And if it's something more extreme than normal, then you might want to go to the doctor and talk to the doctor about, my child is displaying, this type of behavior, or my child can't sleep at night. Um, when my child goes to school, my child is withdrawn. And I don't know, it just can be a lot of multiple things. But I just think that if we bring awareness about it, um, then parents see things that are not normal based off of their child development, then they go to a doctor and seek some type of help, some type of support to find out. You get people diagnosing kids at 7 years old with mood disorders. We know no child cannot have a mood disorder at 7, but people
So
do that.
yeah, yeah. So so I hear, and Regina, I saw you were getting ready to say, so I see one of the things that if I'm a parent sitting at home, if I see something or feel like my child is unwell in some way, so not developing in a way that is typical, shows extreme moods or behavior, if they are, like, for example, excessively sad or excessively worried, or and that it happens for, or moving a lot and over an extended period of time, I should be looking as a parent just for some sign, like they're not sleeping well, eating well, or eating too much, any of those things that, there's just something that doesn't feel right around learning or behavior or emotion. Then I should maybe have a conversation, start off with a conversation with my pediatrician, and then go from there. And Regina, one of the things I heard you say is, I'm having this conversation not in a way that I have to take that as gospel. I'm just taking that as a part of other information that I'm receiving. And if I remember from Access, one of the things that we also look for is, like, where are all the places that it's happening? Because if
Right.
it's only happening at school, then maybe, not blaming schools, but maybe the school is the problem. Because if after school and at home and at church, there's no problem, then we're not going to necessarily think that that's a mental health need. It might be a, hey, that's where you guys advocate and say, maybe this isn't the right fit. Maybe it's not the right teacher. Maybe it's not the right teaching style. Maybe it's not the right behavioral approach. It may not be the kid, right? Like, but if I'm having problems in multiple domains, that's the word that you use, I think, then I'm going to start to get a little bit more concerned. Like, oh, there's some consistent stuff happening in multiple places and spaces, and I should share that with my doctor. Am I kind of right or not right? Or
Yeah, and I would like to just add from my own personal journey, I froze. I don't know if you can still hear me or not.
we can hear you.
Okay. From my own personal journey of dealing with my daughter, first of all, I was keenly aware from the beginning that when she was born, there could potentially be some mental health. Why? Because there's mental health that runs in my family as well as her father's side of the family. And I always self-disclose that I have my own mental health challenges. So I was more aware, and I was making sure that I was monitoring those things. And so I was on top of that. I also recognized that she was not developing in her gross motor skills, which means, being able to climb or swing or those types of things. And also in her fine motor skills, which consists of like writing, tying your shoes, where you're using those little muscles versus your larger muscles. The other thing that I noticed was that speaking of school, she diagnosed herself with school anxiety when she was about 12 years old. She got online, she found an assessment, and she decided that she had extreme school anxiety, and she did. You talk about stomach aches, headaches. On Friday, when she would come home from school, she started plotting for not going to school on Monday, right? Because it was too much for her. School was a trigger for her. The other thing is like you were saying, Karen, was looking at various various places where these things was happening. We wouldn't have any challenges like going to church, but at home there were some challenges, and we definitely have challenges at school. Now, one of the things I can tell you was that I started this journey with my daughter early on. It wasn't until she was 14 years old that she was diagnosed with being autistic. I was livid because I had been taking her to the doctor. I kept saying, there's something wrong, there's something different. I don't know what the situation is. And so I was so upset. And Karen, you and I have talked about this, is that our kids of color are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, ADD, oppositional defiance disorder, not autism, right? And so I was so upset because we missed out on good services and support she could have gotten at a younger age and didn't.
Yeah, that is the heartbreak. I think last week we had, the last time we had our show, we had folks on from DSC. And I will say the way that our developmental disabilities and intellectual disability system works, where if you don't get the early childhood diagnosis, and then they assume that schools are going to catch it, and schools particularly haven't, don't often see the same things in girls and particularly people of color. Like we
Absolutely.
get missed on those diagnostic stuff. And then that means that all of the services that would be available for school age young people, we don't get a chance, many of our kids don't get until adulthood,
Right.
which is just very difficult to get. And then they're trying to get on, right? We don't even want to talk about the puns list and all of those complications.
Right.
Like,
That's a
The
joke.
puns list is
Right,
the funny
it's a joke.
list.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, right?
So it is a heartbreak. And
It
so I
was.
know you and I have known kids or young adults or people who moved into young adulthood who had developmental or intellectual disabilities but didn't get those supports. They were diagnosed, people only worried about their behavioral issues and not their
Right.
emotional or other issues, and then ended up in the criminal justice system as the only place that they got support. And that, that is the constant heartbreak for me when I see that happening.
Regina got lost.
Yeah, we lost her.
But that is so true. And one of my biggest things that I like to focus on is that early intervention. I think that, if you start off, the younger you start off, the with a understanding what's going on with your child, whether they have a diagnosis or not. Just when you teach children how to manage their emotions and take care of themselves and take care of their mental health, then they can recognize themselves when stuff is not, right. And I think that when they learn early how to use coping skills, what works for them, don't work for them, help them be able to transition into adult systems, a little bit better, even though we know that Illinois, our system is, can I say it on this terrible?
No, you can't say a bad word.
Oh no, I'm gonna say just terrible. The supports are, they're we don't have the best mental health supports here, and we don't have enough psychiatrists and psychologists, and like I had a family the other day, and the family doesn't want to accept that they have mental health, but they kind of do. But once I start talking with them, they're kind of like, yeah, this is what's going on. But if I see a third therapist, could they be Black? And so it's kind of hard to find, but I found one, right? But it's just, it's just so hard to access services, and it's so hard for some of us to even ask for services because being in the fact that people might think that they're not doing a good job and it's their fault, that they, that's with the kid, right? And that's not always the case. And we want people to understand that sometimes we have no control over how we're born, right? And it's okay, so someone's telling a kid like she don't, you don't need, don't get mad, don't get angry. Yes, yes, you can get angry, but I need you to let me know why you're angry. Because if you could tell me why, then we can figure out a way to prevent you from getting that angry again because you recognize what triggers that into you, right? So I just think that, even for Regina's daughter, Diana, she's so aware of her mental health and how to take care of herself and when she's not. And she's very good at articulating how to advocate for herself and all different type of things. And I think that's because Regina started out with her early on, so we, I yeah, yeah, if we can just erase some of the stigma around how people think about mental health would just be, I,
And
I want to see people walking around with green ribbons in May, like people walk around with pink ribbons in October.
absolutely. And I'm imagining, and I know this year's theme from the Federation of Families is flipping the script around mental health, but I am imagining that two things. One, the more we can destigmatize it and help people identify things earlier, understand that it isn't like a deficit, there's no shame, that it is, we can normalize it, the better, right? And part of probably parent support is helping destigmatize it, because a lot of times I know when I'm thinking about trauma, if I am a parent who's experiencing trauma or has lived through trauma, there is both sometimes a genetic predisposition and also like a parenting disposition, right? Where if I have an unresolved wound around something like maybe my childhood sexual abuse and then my child is abused, it may be really hard for me to like deal with no effective ways. But if I'm working with a parent support partner and they help me understand like, hey, when you go to therapy, one of the things they're going to do is do some education so that you can understand like how your stuff and your kids' stuff might work together and how you can respond differently. It's a much wholer picture in that your lived experience helps parents understand what to expect, what to anticipate, how to come up with those. When you're sitting down with the counselor, questions, what should you ask? When you're sitting down with the school, if a teacher tells you that they think your kid should be on ADHD medicine, and what you know is that the kid is going through a divorce and their best friend just moved away and they're just really anxious, like how do they navigate that? And you guys in your work and other work that you do as parent leaders, right, like is helping people understand all of that, and that helps flip the script. Am I getting it correct?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
got it.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. And I think that so even with, like if I had a parent that just wanted me to go to therapy, but I'm like, I can't go to therapy with you. I mean, I would like to, but she's what it's things I want to ask. Okay, let's write all this stuff down. So when you get in there, you can ask. And if you can't feel like you want to, you can't ask them, just hand them the paper and say, these are some of my concerns. But also recognizing that when they leave out of therapy, what was the plan? Like, because you just sitting in there and they talking, you ask questions, and then you come back out and you go, what happened? I don't know. We just talk, ask questions. They give you anything to do. They talk about, well, we need to go make sure when you go back, what's the plan, right? Because you should have a plan on how and what to do so you won't get triggered. Regina and myself always say that sometimes our children's mental health triggers the parents' mental health, right? And how do you prevent that from happening, right? Just like you said, something traumatic happened, you can be overly hypervigilant around your child, and somebody can just be in a house with your kid and you think, oh my God, they touched my kid, they did something to my kid, right? Now you paranoid and kid paranoid, they don't know because the mom just got triggered, right? So we want to make sure that when parents, this, we go to meetings, we do this, we prepare them ahead of time, right? We talk to them about what it's going to look like. We talk about the whole process of how that looks, and what just preparing them, because We want people to feel empowered around what's going on in their life. It's okay to know that these things are happening, but you still have sense of power if you can educate and be aware of what's going on. Yeah, and flipping the script, that's, we had our youth program on the 5th. And when I tell you these young adults were awesome. And with their last question, you asked them what would they leave for people their age? And they were just saying like, oh, that it's okay. Find somebody to talk to. We all suffer through certain things. And the advice they gave was so good. And you guys know me. Y'all know me. I'm always emotional when young people do things. I try my best not to cry because it was so powerful. But just being able to one way to flip the script. The other thing we did on flipping the script was we had a providers training where we know that as providers, sometimes we can be triggered by our the people we serve, and because we still have everything going on at home, and because we have coworkers, right? How do you work through that? Right? How do you model the behavior so you can model the behavior for the people that you're serving and stuff like that. And so and then last night we had the flip the script, a panel discussion. We had a psychologist, we had I can't think of what this guy was, but he used to be a director over residential treatment, and he does something I can't remember. We had a parent. That was a parent, and she managed a peer support, Egyptian Help County.
Wow.
We had a youth, which was Dayana. She was awesome. And it was a great conversation. It was really rich. So we want to flip the script by just, hey, bringing this to the forefront. Yes, let's have this talk, right? Let's help people to serve people differently that have mental health, to support them differently, right? And just like you said, give us being able to give support non-traditionally, you know, walking along the side of the parent, not in the front, right? Not in the back, pushing them like you need to do this, but on the side.
I got you. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to sort of really leave this conversation probably in maybe a more hopeful or hope-filled place. So we started this conversation before we went live where we were talking about just the community violence. And so I guess I would like for you to say out loud and articulate, if there was more family engagement, family support, family, right, family, the one-on-one work, how might that transform sort of, right? I always see the community violence as a symptom of our community's disease. So how could your work help eliminate, address some of those needs that we see in our community?
I think from my experience is we oftentimes have a lot of single-led households, single parents. And sometimes life can just get overwhelming, right? And just to come alongside, like Ulanda said, you're not in this alone, right? We're here to support you. What are your family's needs? What can we do to support you? And it's not always, well, they need food. They need to know how to budget. That's not everybody's need.
Yeah.
Every family is different. Ask them what they need. And sometimes parents just don't know, right? Not care that's because a lot of times people want to say parents don't care. I have yet to meet a parent who doesn't care about their child. They may not know how to deal with the situation, right? Getting their kiddos connected with non-traditional services, helping them to know how to better themselves, or whatever the case may be. But don't blame the parent for everything, because there are factors that are pulling on our kids. The culture is pulling on our kids. How do we support parents to support their children? And every family is different. So there's no blanket statement as to what we can do other than be available, be accessible, and support them where they are. And what they don't know, help them to know, help give them what they need.
That is so beautiful. Yolanda, do you have, I mean, because, right, like what we know from all the research is that when we have support, when we have people with us, we are better mentally, we are better emotionally. And if we're better emotionally and mentally, we can be a more effective caregiver. We have better bandwidth and capacity to be there. And I don't think that people realize just how isolated so many of our families and so under supported, because frequently, right, we have them navigating and going to 13 different places. Once one child has a problem, then we sort of overextend their already limited capacity. So Yolanda, do you have any closing words?
And I would just say that a community that stays together, a community that heals together, right? I would say that if every person in our community would take some type of responsibility on what's going on in our community, then I think that the community would be better. So if I know that next door that the mother has 3 children over there, and I know that she's working and doing the best she can, and I know that she needs some type of support, me as being a good community member, a good neighbor, I should be able to extend myself. My children always tell me, you need to stay out of people's business. And my granddaughter always say, I want to be like grandma. She's going to save the world. I think that we all are individually responsible, even if we're not doing anything wrong in the community, to make it better in a way that by being present, being helpful, being a part of committees, not saying it's not my problem, close the door. It's everybody in this community is responsible for everybody in this community. And I think if we start to share and if we start to care more and take responsibility, we'll have a much better community.
I love it. I can't say anything else. It has been such a pleasure spending the hour with you both. Know that the Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance is available. They're available on social media. Find their website. They are a local resource. So if you're a provider or community group or organization and you want to know how better support families, they are our local homegrown resource that provides support. And if you're also a parent who's got curiosity and want to know where to go for help, I know that they are readily available to reach out just to sort of troubleshoot. There are support groups. There's a bunch of different resources. We only covered like a fraction of all the good things that they do for and behalf families in this community. Thank you both so much, and stay well and enjoy the beautiful weather.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Yes.
you.